For America can be great again, she must be free again. You're listening to The Alex Jones Show.
I'm going to do some live transmissions tomorrow here from the InfoWars News Center in Central Texas. And then we intend to go live right here out of the studio with the Skeleton Crew this Sunday. I'll already be up here 4 to 6 p.m., but I intend to do live transmissions throughout the day with whoever in the crew volunteers to be here to track this as it unfolds. I want to go to your phone calls now in this hour. Frank, Carlos, Anthony, Gary, Raider, and others. The toll-free number to join us is 800-259-9231. I'm going to recap the latest developments with the hurricane and more at the start of the next segment. There's also a lot of big geopolitical activities going on. ISIS and the left is celebrating the hurricanes. I mean, Mainline, Hollywood stars, CNN, saying America deserves it. This is just people that hate the country. It's why they work for the foreign banks that hijack the nation. You wonder why they're so hateful? You got to hire folks that hate the country and hate prosperity because they want to rob you. They're scum. So that's all coming up as well. Leanne McAdoo is in Florida. She's going to be popping in. We've got Owen Schroyer coming in a little bit later. The video of a little girl, she looks like she's maybe 10 years old, telling him to F off when he's out just asking questions at an anti-Trump rally last weekend. That got picked up everywhere. I mean, a bunch of his videos got seen. It's like 20 million times now. One video is like 15 million. One version's like 11 million. But this has been seen millions of times now. This little, what is she, 10? And then, but that's not the news. It's them celebrating. It's the celebrating. Oh, she's such a good girl. It's so good to have our kids not answer his questions, but just flip him off, because that's the reporter that says there's Mars bases with slaves on it. Never said that. They just say, Alex Jones is the one that said there's Martian bases. Okay, so say that we're wrong about Martian bases. Don't just say F you, but that's what the adults do. They celebrate that the response is F you, Nazi, F you. Because they're so genteel and trendy and nice and loving. But if you even criticize a trendy on YouTube, they try to ban you, but they're allowed to say F you and all the rest of it. So that's coming up. Let's go to Truth Raider in Oregon as we're about to go to break. Yeah, the next 2 minutes, Truth Raider. Love the calls. Good old Truth Raider. Yep. I think I'm going to just sit here while he's on the line for a while just to see what happens, because that's why I love taking calls. Sometimes they're the very best. Sometimes they're the very worst. Bad phones, aren't listening when you go to them. Just crazy. Let's let him go. Now we're going to get refocused. No, we're done with the caller. We're done with that caller. Thank you. Now, everybody knows why I don't take a lot of calls. Because they're frustrating. They're very, 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 very frustrating. Because we'll have the best callers in the world, and then we'll have callers that are drunk on cough syrup and aren't listening and got bad phones and aren't there and aren't listening and have no idea what planet they're on. And it just puts me through a meat grinder. And I know it puts you through a meat grinder. But today's the day that we're going to take calls on the subject of weather changes and this hurricane and how it shows how tenuous civilization is. And we're going to, because the good calls are amazing, and they bring up topics and angles and breaking news that I would have never thought about, and they add real spice to the transmission. Whenever I say we're on a certain subject, though, we get great callers. When I say free-for-all, God, help us. So, we're going to execute this on the other side. In fact, I may just give out our number here and do the calls here. It's not that GCN's bad, but they got one guy running the board up there and taking the calls, and I think we may just do that because we got to rework this situation. Because every other call's going to do that. They're going to sit there like they got hit in the head with a ton of bricks, like their brains are all over the ground and their heart stopped pumping 50 years ago. Drudge Report has got a photo from space of it, Hurricane Irma, with two more hurricanes Jose now upgraded to Category 4, and another that's a Category 3 lined up behind it. Strongest hurricane ever recorded, over 185 miles an hour, 48 hours away. Miami in the bullseye. Fuel runs out as residents try to flee Irma. Up to 12-foot storm surge. South Beach is now a ghost town. All Florida residents should be prepared to evacuate. One of the largest mass exodus in the nation's history. Power could be out for days, weeks, or months. Miami Live Television, Channel 4, 6, 7, 10. We've got mirrored links as well on our Irma Watch page on newswars.com. We're going to make News Wars today and through the weekend one of the main centers there. We're updating the site right now with mainly hurricane news, and we're going to have live video feeds posted up to that throughout Saturday and Sunday, not just the Sunday broadcast I do, 4 to 6 p.m. And all of our affiliates are welcome to grab the audio and video feeds. Obviously, this show is free to air. A lot of stations want an affiliate agreement, and, you know, we do those. But my show, my TV program / radio program is going to a free-to-air format here very, very quickly. So we're very, very easy to deal with. Meanwhile, North Korea is being hit with more sanctions. Mexico's kicked their ambassador out and closed down their embassy. And surprisingly, North Korea is doing a lot of business with Mexico. North Korea is set to test more missiles this weekend, but a solar storm brewing is set to maybe shut that down and block the avionics that they would use for the trajectory of the ICBM, because they're using more primitive systems of radio control. So mass solar storms, record earthquake, 8.2 on the Richter scale in southern Mexico, northern Central America, into Guatemala. Death toll well above 30. Pray for those folks down in Mexico. So a lot happening. Why is it all happening at once? Well, the sun goes through different cycles, and it's got a 20-something year phase and an 11-year phase. But we've been going out of the 11-year phase of the sun having less solar spots and cooling, and now it's having record spots again. What's a spot? It's a mass coronal ejection, sometimes hundreds of times the size of the Earth, blasting out into space. And when we get a direct hit, it's not the actual heat or the flame anymore, but it's the ions, it's the radiation, it's the storm. It can fry satellites, as everybody knows. It can sometimes be so strong it can kill or sicken astronauts. But we have an atmosphere of about 15 feet of water. If you condense the first 35,000 feet together, it's about 15 feet of water, about an inch or two of dust. So we have the equivalent of a rock shield, an inch of rock shield, 12 feet of water to 15 feet of water. And that blocks us. If you condense it all together, that's what's in our atmosphere. That's why you go up on a 20,000-foot mountain or 15,000-foot mountain, you get sunburned so easy, so much quicker, because the sun is that much stronger. Why are we seeing record hurricanes? They're always associated with when we're turned towards the sun in this hemisphere, the summer, into the winter, into the fall, when the water has gotten its hottest, at the peak of the summer into the fall. That's when it peaks, basic meteorology. But then you add the sun, which is, again, already driving the hurricane, and you add mass coronal ejections and the particles coming into the atmosphere. That then forms more nuclei, and we get these mega storms. It's the sun. You can pay carbon taxes to Al Gore and Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton all day and Lord Rothschild. You can pray to the Church of Climate Change. You can buy your carbon indulgences, but it's not going to change it, because the sun is 99%, according to top astrophysicists, meteorologists, and computer models, 99% of the weather change and climate on this earth. Less than 1% is humans and volcanic activity. Humans and volcanic, and it's estimated, just look at it for yourself, and so many studies will make your head spin, that of that 1%, volcanoes are almost all of it. One volcano, one big gaseous Mount St. Helens explosion like Mount St. Helens in 1980 is the equivalent of more than a decade of human output. Look it up. So we're not even 1%. That big, giant sun, how many thousands of times bigger is it than the Earth? You go out at noon, you lay out in it, it burns your skin. You can cook eggs on the side of the asphalt with it. But the UN says it has nothing to do with the climate. It's 100% you, and you're to blame. You geoengineered. You're the weather weapon. Oh, but government with systems that can manipulate the weather, manipulate what the sun has already created, they can nudge it and steer it. That's been declassified for decades. Oh, let's not look at that. That's kooky. It's you individually. Now, I want to go to your phone calls. We're going to do it after the break. The toll-free number is 800-259-9231. And we're specifically taking calls on the earth changes, the earthquakes, the sun. But why do political changes always line up with this as well? And why are total eclipses of the sun associated with it as well, historically, even by mainline historians? Frank and Carlos and Anthony and Gary and Jacob, your calls are coming up on the other side of this break. But first, I want to get to this report by John Bound on DACA. It's such a hoax that this is a racist thing to do. Mexico doesn't care if you claim you've been down there for 20 years, but you weren't born there. You don't get citizenship. Until recently, you couldn't even own land in Mexico unless you were born there, because they didn't want people to come in and take over their country. Every other nation's been like that. The UN admits that they want open borders to collapse Western societies and exploit the third world populations, not empower them. So all Trump did was say, I don't care if you actually were here since you were a kid. You can prove it. You're not a criminal. You can stay. But Congress has got to pass a law to do it, and there's got to be vetting. You're not going to call 45-year-old men that have been deported sometimes 40-plus times who are born in Mexico. We're deporting them. Obama just can't sign an executive order like a predator, like a king. So here's the clip.
I'm here today to announce that the program known as DACA that was effectuated under the Obama administration is being rescinded. The policy was implemented unilaterally to great controversy and legal concern after Congress rejected legislative proposals to extend similar benefits on numerous occasions to this same group of illegal aliens. In other words, the executive branch, through DACA, deliberately sought to achieve what the legislative branch specifically refused to authorize on multiple occasions. Such an open-ended circumvention of immigration laws was an unconstitutional exercise of authority by the executive branch.
Deferred action for childhood arrivals. It's a political hot potato that is open to a variety of possible outcomes.
Dreamers, supporters of Dreamers say this is cold-hearted. You're leaving the future of 800,000 people uncertain, up in the air. What's your message to them?
It's not cold-hearted for the president to uphold the law. We are a nation of law and order. And the day that we start to ignore the fact that we are that, then we throw away everything that gives these people a reason to want to come to our country.
I have a love for these people, and hopefully now Congress will be able to help them and do it properly. And I can tell you, in speaking to members of Congress, they want to be able to do something and do it right.
Meanwhile, President Trump and his cabinet are being savaged by the left. Regardless, that former President Obama is ultimately to blame for unconstitutionally bypassing Congress back in 2012 by exaggerating the implementation of prosecutorial discretion and expanding DACA for roughly 800,000 illegal minors.
Ultimately, this is about basic decency. Again, this is former President Barack Obama. This is about whether we are a people who kick hopeful young strivers out of America or whether we treat them the way we'd want our own kids to be treated. It's about who we are as a people and who we want to be.
The left, deaf to the common sense of enforcing our immigration laws, is firing back with legal hubris. The Hill reports 14 states and the District of Columbia filed a lawsuit Wednesday against President Trump's decision to roll back the previous administration's deferred action for childhood arrivals. Washington State Attorney General Bob Ferguson, a Democrat, said in announcing the suit, the president has made numerous statements on the campaign trail and in office disparaging Mexicans. We allege the president's own statements make clear that dreamers are being targeted based on their national origin. What a stretch. The onus is on the left for the entire situation, whether they admit it or not. Obama played his Zelenskyite hand in order to divide the country and garner grateful illegal alien voters for the Democrats.
Let's be clear. This is not amnesty. This is not immunity. This is not a path to citizenship. It's not a permanent fix. This is a temporary stopgap measure that lets us focus our resources wisely while giving a degree of relief and hope to talented, driven, patriotic young people.
Obama's indulgence has backfired big time. Had the unconstitutional law not been implemented, then the 800,000 DACA minors wouldn't be forced to live in the shadows.
They came here to live in the shadows. And we're not denying them that opportunity to live in the shadows. If you're going to waive the application of the law to groups of people, it is amnesty. And amnesty in America with regard to immigration is a reward for immigration lawbreakers, and it is a pardon for immigration lawbreakers coupled with the reward of the objective of their crime.
The U.S. boasts 37 million legal immigrants at a rate of 1 million per year. Our doors aren't closed, regardless of the left and the mainstream media's collusion to make it appear so. John Bound reporting for Infowars.com.
We'll be back. Please stay with us. We're about to go to Frank, Carlos, Anthony, Gary, Jacob, and others. And as soon as you hear me hang up on one of these great callers, it's your chance to call in. I'd like to hear from you specifically if you're in Florida, just what you're expecting to happen. I'm trying to get a hold of one of my guys whose wife lives part-time out in Florida. He's out there checking on their house, but he's there dealing with their 4 dogs and everything, deciding on whether they're going to evacuate because they're on a little island that has a little causeway into the mainland, and they're deciding whether they're going to evacuate or not because they close it at 3 o'clock today. And he's not answering the phone. Either the cell phones aren't getting through because there's so many people using them, or he's too busy trying to decide. And that's fine. It's just that if it hits land as a category 4 or 5, it's just going to be biblical. And it's the scale of it. Hopefully it dissipates quickly. The problem is there's a whole nother one, Jose, basically tracking the same way that just became a category 4. And again, a hot summer, massive solar flare activity. The sun heats the water to begin with its regular rays, but when big, giant super fireballs go out with all that radiation, what happens? You get bigger hurricanes. And I keep harping on this because nowhere in the news is there any discussion about the sun solar flares doing this. But if I get any astrophysicist on that all advise the Weather Channel and advise the British military and advise the Pentagon, they're all top people. You just never hear about them. And they're hard to get on because they're such academics. They're the ones that make the final determinations with the sun and how it's connected to it and what the sun and moon are doing. And I just can't believe there's no discussion. I mean, here's one out of the Australian news. Solar storms threaten to put the brakes on North Korea's missiles. So it can knock out the avionics on the missiles. It can cut out communication. I mean, we know it stops that. We know it knocks out satellites. But no discussion of what it does to the hurricanes. Instead, we're blamed. The sun is the main reason we have hurricanes, period. It's not even debated in science. It heats the water in general, and when it creates even more nuclei, it creates more water vapor in that current, and it begins to spin faster and faster, connected to the Coriolis effect of the planet. I'm not an astrophysicist. I've just interviewed a bunch of them. All right, I'm going to stop ranting. Long segment coming up. I'll get probably one call in this segment. Who's up first here? You know, Carlos is up in Montreal. How about Gary? Because he's in Alabama. That's in the storm's path. Gary, what is your take on why we're seeing all this changing weather? Do you agree with me it's the sun, or do you think like the Democrats say, God is cursing us?
It is all biblical. It goes back to Trump being elected. That was the wound to the beast's head. And it's all biblical. It's in the Bible. And
that wound, it appears, kills the beast system, and then it comes back even stronger. They think it's miraculous.
Right. And they end up a lot of people do, because the religion, Satan, of course, has his hands in religion, too, our churches.
Of course.
End up following this false Christ, this false prophet. And if we would just study the Bible verse by verse, chapter by chapter, it's all written.
What do you think of Trump in general?
Trump is fantastic. He is the wound to the beast's head. It's a sign for all of us to be on guard, pay attention.
I tend to agree with you. Trump say last warning, because God always warns you over and over and over again before you're put into bondage.
Satan comes before Jesus. That's what we have to let everybody know. Satan comes before Jesus. He's coming to fool everybody. And then Jesus will come back and bust his butt.
Let me ask you this question, Gary. We know the sun's driving the earthquakes. We know it's driving the hurricanes. We know it's getting very active. We know that. It's not us. But then why do political upheavals come before these type of astrophysical things historically? Because we can scientifically show that the sun's coming in, not just the atmosphere, but radiation and different ions and different types of fields are going in, bouncing off the core, the nickel core of the Earth, bouncing back out. That's why they see these northern light events, even in Mexico right before this earthquake. It was reported by Reuters. So we know there's science there. But what explains the humans getting all agitated right before this happens?
It's the devil. He has his influence in our government, in our schools, in our finances, and in our churches. The science end of it, God's in control. He's in control.
Oh, there's no doubt about that. There's no doubt about people trying to run this planet. They're not God, though they want to be. Thank you, Gary. Great points. Carlos, Frank, Jacob, Anthony, stay with us. We'll be back. Depending on the map you look at, there was an 8.1 or 8.2 magnitude earthquake hit southern Mexico, northern Guatemala. It was picked up by seismographs in Austin, Texas. We have 3 big hurricanes now floating around. One is out in the Atlantic. Jose is now a Category 4. We've got one on the southern coast of Mexico in the western Mediterranean named Katia. So I'm sure that's Vladimir Putin's fault. It's a Russian name. And then, of course, we've got Irma barreling down. And right now, the strongest part of the storm with 180-mile-an-hour winds is in between the islands and is set on its track to hit north-central Cuba with devastating winds. And if it doesn't slow down a lot, by the time it hits southern Florida and goes into Miami, if it's still a Category 5 or 4, I don't need to tell you what's going to happen. We have already seen one of the biggest evacuations in world history. The images are ongoing. They're at Infowars.com, Newswars.com, of just areas that look like ghost towns, empty stores, gas is gone, and highways choked down to 5-10 miles an hour. Some areas complete standstill as all of this is unfolding. So I've already talked to some of the crew that we've already launched the last month. David Knight's new broadcast, 8 a.m. to 11 a.m. when I go on Central, The Real News. And then Owen Schroyer comes on at 3 o'clock to 6 with The War Room, with Mike Cernovich, and, of course, Roger Stone and many others that contribute. But we are going to be busy bees. I'm going to come in tomorrow and do an update on the storm. And then we are going to go live 8 a.m. Eastern. But before I do that, we're also going to be getting into the economy. Hillary Clinton cast Putin as a man-spreader. We have the video and audio of that coming up. You cannot make this type of stuff up. Former top Clinton fundraiser says Hillary, in a public statement to The Hill, should shut the F up and go away. But again, that just shows the incredible arrogance of these people, that she will not go away. It is the hubris that is their undoing. 2/3 of Americans are now getting most of their news from social media. That's why a new study shows. That's why mainstream media is panicking, because folks would rather watch what somebody shoots on Snapchat in Bermuda or Cuba or in Miami than they would on CNN, because they just don't want the added filter of CNN's bull. And that's why the mainstream media wants censorship, is because they can't compete. But even if you're able to shut down Drudge Report or Infowars.com or Newswars.com, even if you're able to do that, you're not going to shut down the individuals who are all still going to be on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, their own little websites. But more and more, like Matt Drudge said a year and a half ago when he was here, all of you need to buck the trend of everything being on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, or these other platforms, because they're going to censor us there. You can have your platform there, but your main platform needs to be your own website where you control what's on it, where it's on your servers or on your little service provider. But when you put yourself, it's like when the cloud came out 10 years ago. They said, put everything on the cloud. And I remember telling my family, don't put your iPhone photos on the cloud. That is the most hackable thing. The corporations want that because they're already going in and getting your stuff. And it's all come out that they're just using your stuff. The hackers are getting into it. It is a giant disaster. Why would you want to store your photos and your videos out in some nebulous thing? It's like folks used to look at grandparents or great-grandparents and say, they're kooks. They keep their money buried in the backyard, or they keep some of it under the mattress, or, instead they just own real estate, or they own restaurants, or, they invest in their family, or they give their money away to charity. They don't trust big banks. That's because most people had their money taken in 1929 through 1935 or so. The government ordered gold physically confiscated, but folks wouldn't turn it in. So people been through this before. And now you see banks taking people's money in Europe for bail-ins, and now they're talking about doing it if Hillary would have gotten in. So not keeping your money in a bank, or some of your money, you need to have, eggs in different baskets. That's always the smartest thing, diversify. But not having your stuff on a cloud, that is just common sense, ladies and gentlemen. We don't keep anything associated with InfoWars on a cloud. We may have basic videos and things that we're putting out to the public that's not private on clouds as backups. We don't keep anything that is supposedly going to be secure just floating around on some big giant, supposedly, secure system, because they've been proven to be the most unsecure systems there are. Now, I'm going to stop preaching. It's just that's some of the news we've got here. We're going to be going over. There's so much more I'm going to be getting to. Before I go any further and take your calls, we are a listener-supported transmission, and because of you supporting us, we're changing the world. So I want to thank you all for supporting us, and as you metric up the scale of your support, we're able to offer products, whether they be supplements, vitamins, minerals, nutraceuticals, water filtration, air filtration, apparel made in America. We've also got it made overseas. It's your choice. We're able to offer it for lower and lower prices. We offer the Alexa Breeze 4-staged ion, carbon, you name it, filter system for $200. Now, it was $149 for a while, but you just can't do that forever because we don't make any money on that. Comparable units used to be $1,000. Now they've come down because of miniaturization and cost going down to about $500. This baby, out for 2 years, is $200, down from $249. The others have dropped from $1,000 to $500. And this sucker is rated just as good as leading competitors that are greedy, that are sold online and in department stores. It has a 4.9 review. And since we put these in here, the air is so much better. And I don't want to get gross, but the guys joke around. A certain person in the building passed gas 5 feet from one, and it went from a big blue light, looks like a robot on the front, to red. Red is when it's really getting bad stuff. Then it goes down to purple, then to pink, then to blue. And it is amazing. The sensor alone should cost $200. Then it's got 4 filters. It's got a quiet mode, but it isn't as good then. We've got it turned up on high, then you can barely hear it. I've got 2 in this studio because this is not a luxury. This is an essential for yourself and your family. You can just search engine it. There are big studies out there from London and from Calcutta and from New York City, Manhattan, from all over the world. Mexico City especially is one of the worst because it's down in that bowl in the heat, kind of like Los Angeles is as well. The stuff gets trapped in there, all the particula, that people live on average 7 to 12 years less, depending on the study, in a major city full of particula. So the biggest thing you can do for yourself is water filtration, air filtration, healthier food. None of us are perfect. But for your children, for your wife, for your husband, especially if you've got allergies on top of it, all the particula weigh our body down, and then finally all the plant particula, the pollen, the dust, our bodies just give up. So we have that unit, the Alexa Pure Breeze, for $200, $199.95 at InfoWarsStore.com. We have the ProPure G2 stainless steel gravity-fed filter that cuts out all the garbage for 30% off right now. That's their biggest unit. We got some of the smaller units discounted as well. And we have 50% off all of the My Patriot Supply food that we private label as InfoWars Select. It's how we're able to contractually get around the minimum pricing rules that we have agreements on. But let me tell you, major arm twisting is happening for this because it's already super good price. But I'm really aggressive. So code word IRMA, 50% off. And we don't raise the price and then lower it and it's really 25%. This is 50% off the regular price. It's already smoking good. InfoWarsStore.com. Super high quality storable foods drop shipped to you. Basically the day you order from Utah, you order with us, you get the biggest discount that you're going to find anywhere with promo code IRMA. So instead of gouging like Amazon on storable food, water filtration, other things, flashlights, everything at InfoWars emergency related is 30 to 50% off. And those are real numbers. InfoWarsLife.com. And with North Korea and the economy and the globalists and the plans to assassinate Trump and the earth changes and all the quickenings that are happening, it's just good to have insurance you can eat. All right. Because when you look at what's happening in Florida, it shows you how tenuous civilization is and how a storm could put everything on edge, or suddenly two storms, or now another storm. Jose coming in could be as bad as Irma. I'm hoping everything turns out okay, but it's not fear-mongering when mainstream media finally says this is a mega storm, this storm's nuclear, this storm's dangerous, nuclear power plants are in the path of it, this could trigger a major problem. Because the sun, again, sends in all those different frequencies, all those different solar winds, all those different ions, all those different particles, smashing into our thin atmosphere, coming in, going into the Earth's surface, going into the Earth's core, as the Earth absorbs all that energy. And as that energy bounces back out, massive earthquakes. As the radiation's coming in, ionizing, heating the water, but also creating more particula, more ionization to create more condensation to make the hurricanes that much stronger. That's what the perfect storm is. Hot weather from the sun heating back up and solar ejections. And I just keep repeating it because all over the news they're blaming you and I, saying this proves Al Gore is right, that we have a big storm. All the debunking of Al Gore's baloney in serious books and documentaries is about the sun. Now, I will stop preaching and go to your calls. Let's go to, let me see, Levi is Florida, north of Orlando. Then we'll go to Carlos, Frank, and others. Levi, thanks for holding. You're on the air.
Hey, how you doing, Alex? Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. So what are you expecting?
For the hurricane, nothing much. I believe it's going to be a Category 1 or 2 when it hits where I'm at, so I don't think it'll be too bad. But neighbors are boarding up and whatnot.
Do you think Limbaugh is right that they hype every one of these hurricanes like it's the end of the world? That I mean, the media spun it that he says it's not real. He says the hurricane doesn't exist. No, he's saying that they're always going fast out in the Gulf and that he thinks they're going to slow down.
Well, I definitely think the weather has been strange. We got 3 hurricanes going on right now. There's a person called Dane Wigington. He does geoengineeringwatch.org. He's a pretty good and reliable source for any type of weather.
What is he saying?
Well, he's going down the route that they're spraying the sky and manipulating the weather, and he has evidence to back it up, which is the scary part.
Yeah, I know who he is. We should get him back on. There's also a meteorologist that runs Weather Wars. Let's get all these folks on for the special Sunday transmission. We're going to line up a big raft of guests to cover all that. The reason I'm saying this is so deadly is normally they're going 140 miles an hour when they start out in the Atlantic, and then by the time they hit, they're going 60 or 70. This time it's 185. Now what? It's slowed down to 170. And by the time it hits Cuba, okay, 150. And then that means it'll hit Florida going 100. So, I mean, if it hits South Florida going 100, that is going to be like a giant bomb going off.
Alex, what do you think the chances of it hitting Texas again? What do you think about that?
Well, these models have gotten pretty darn accurate, and most models show it going either up the East Coast, right up the middle of Florida, or kind of right up western Florida, up into Tennessee. But if it did go into Texas again, I tell you, all I know is they have weather modification technology. It's a fact. And then every time I talk about it, the media misrepresents and says that I said Obama sent the tornado, or I said this or that. I don't know, because it's all classified. All I know is they can create hurricanes, they can kill hurricanes, they can steer hurricanes, they can weaken them, they can strengthen them. That is a fact, declassified 2006, and it was certified by the Department of Energy, the Pentagon, and the Navy, and the Air Force in 1967. It's all declassified. So what do you think?
The Operation Jade Helm map's talking about the southern hemisphere of America basically getting taken out. What do you think about like connecting these storms to FEMA?
Jade Helm said Texas is enemy territory. I said, look, they're training us that America's the enemy. They're trying to train our military. They spun that I said there's an invasion this summer. Never said it. Total lies. So, again, I hate to even comment on these things because they misrepresent what I have to say. But, yes, all of this is about conditioning us. And Trump hasn't gotten in control of much of the government. The transparent things where he has executive power and he knows what he can do, he's gotten done. Everywhere else, the Congress, the bureaucracy have absolutely thumbed their noses at the president. One group so far has backed him, and that's the Supreme Court, because what he's done is totally cut and dry. Thank you so much, Levi. Be safe there in Florida. I hope you're right. I hope it turns into a tropical depression and just gives you some well-needed rain. But there are already hundreds and hundreds dead, no communications with many of these Caribbean islands that have been hit. This is a serious situation, so pray for folks. Frank in North Carolina, then Carlos. Frank, you're on the air.
Well, you might as well throw Professor James McCanney in there as well for your show, because I'm skeptical, but he claims that his observations indicate that these storms are being controlled. And not only that, he claims that he was part of it, that he worked on it some decades ago and was instrumental in getting all this put together. So I think he lives outside of the U.S. now, someone tells me, because I was asking him why isn't he dead. And the person, Whittington, I believe, that the last caller was talking about, I believe he's the guy behind what in the hell are they spraying, or who is spraying us, and all those videos as well.
Well, all I know is, in 1992, they gave a Nobel Prize to a group of scientists for calling to have things added to the jet fuel to create these, quote, clouds to block solar radiation as a sunscreen. That was a cover for weather modification. And then they've been doing it massively, and then they misrepresent to the public what they're doing. And NASA admits our atmosphere is 20+% darker, they say, because of condensation trails. Well, the point is, jets that don't have the messed with fuel don't put out the giant persistent trails, and then regular jet fuel that hasn't been messed with only puts out the smaller ice crystal trails that dissipate in a few minutes. So there's no telling how big this is because of the shadow government. You want to hold over, Frank? Anything else?
Yeah, well, the atomic test, didn't they say that if they light the atmosphere on fire, what the hell?
That's right. That was done when they tested H-bombs in the atmosphere. That was us. Ladies and gentlemen, I've had it with President Trump. I'm finally done with him. The cruelty of what he just said about DACA and the children and adults in this country that were not born here but came here when they were young. The cruelty of what he just said in his new statement about the situation pushed me over the line, and I now am officially off the Trump train. Here is the new statement on DACA that is the most hate-filled, racist crap. It's true. All of his supporters are racist, like the Republican strategists have been saying. If you do not decry the president now, you are KKK, you are a rapist. Like Michael Moore said, you are a Nazi. I'm done. It's true what they said about him. I can't believe it. And I've just got to go ahead and be, I'm just blown away. I was wrong. I apologize. Here is his new bigoted, hateful statement. And if you don't decry it, you're a rapist and you're a Nazi. I agree with the Democrats and the Republicans and Michael Moore. This is a Nazi statement.
But we have to send a clear message. Just because your child gets across the border, that doesn't mean the child gets to stay. So we don't want to send a message that is contrary to our laws or will encourage more children to make that dangerous.
And that was Donald Trump in 2014, because Hillary Clinton would never make a statement like that. I mean, it's reasonable to say, hey, you just claim you were here as a kid or a young person. You're a 45-year-old guy, that's been deported 14, 15, 16, some cases 40-plus times for armed robbery, rape, you name it. You know what? We're just going to believe you. Wave a little magic wand. You can stay. And everybody else that came in legally and went to college here and contributed to the economy and got jobs here and actually follow the laws, we're going to penalize them because we want an undercurrent of people politically we can control. That's a good thing. And how dare, should we hear that statement? In fact, maybe the full statement from Trump. He's suddenly got a little bit higher voice, though. But, I expect everyone to repudiate him now. Let's play Donald John Trump, the most evil man in the world. Literally Hitler. Here it is.
But we have to send a clear message. Just because your child gets across the border, that doesn't mean the child gets to stay. So we don't want to send a message that is contrary to our laws or will encourage more children to make that dangerous
journey. Well, there goes President Trump. I didn't know he was a cross-dresser. But, hey, I'm not against that. I think you can be what you want to be as long as you don't hurt anybody else, as long as you don't sexualize kids. I agree with Camille Paglia. Killed the Camille Paglia clip. She's come out and said that it's child abuse in public school to tell a 5-year-old boy he's really a girl or vice versa. That's sexualization of children. That's bigoted, too. Let's play what this evil woman had to say.
I think that the transgender propagandists, make wildly inflated claims about the multiplicity of gender. Sex reassignment surgery, even today, with all of its advances, cannot in fact change anyone's sex. You can define yourself as a trans man or a trans woman at one of these new gradations along the scale. But ultimately, every single cell in the human body, the DNA in that cell remains coded for your biological birth. So there are a lot of lies being propagated at the present moment, which I think is not in anyone's best interest. What I'm concerned about is the popularity and the availability of sex reassignment surgery. So it's someone who is feeling doesn't feel that he or she